Is it on your digital or diligent one? It's on the written one. Sorry.
That's okay.
My bad. Jeff, welcome. We're happy to have you tonight. And you are talking to us about supply chain and group purchasing.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I actually had the pleasure of meeting some of you at the board meeting back in, I think, September. So nice to be back with you.
Thanks for
I was
joining
asked
us.
by Don to present on what our supply chain team does, and I guess I'll go ahead and forewarn you that we do a lot of tedious, detailed, data-driven work. So it's not real sexy to talk about, but it's what we love to do. So I'll go ahead and apologize in advance for the sometimes boring topic, and I'll try my best to keep you guys awake. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Let me first start by giving you a little background on Health Tech Supply Chain Program. So we manage just shy of $100 million in hospital contracted spend. So our hospitals obviously spend more than that, but 100 million is what we've been able to capture under a contract. And this number continues to grow as we add, more and more contracts and products every year. And this type of dollar volume here, 100 million, gives us a good bit of leverage with, the medical vendors and distributors out there in the world. So, leverage is always a good thing in the business world. So we've built that over the years. But consists right now of about 15 hospitals presently in this program, supply chain program. The interesting tidbit: most of the 15 hospitals we actively manage, but several of them stayed on our program even after they exited the management agreement. So I think that's due to the value of the program, and I think that kind of speaks to the strength and of the program and our services that we give to the hospital. So I'm kind of proud of that. And Vizient is our longtime GPO partner. I think you guys are well aware of that now. GPO is an acronym for Group Purchasing Organization. You probably know that as well. We throw that around a lot. That's our favorite acronym, I think. But Vizient was formerly MedAssets. If any of you remember the legacy companies, Broadlane was purchased by MedAssets, and Health Tech was part of Broadlane, and that goes back probably 25, maybe 30 years. It's been a long time with this particular relationship. So one of the key things you might want to know about Vizient is they're what is called a voluntary GPO. So that just means you have flexibility to use any vendor you want. Believe it or not, some GPOs force you to use specific sole source vendor agreements, or you lose access to the entire program. But Vizient has just about in every category multi-source awards, which means you've got options at every turn. So that's important to have options. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to tell your physicians that they can't use the products that they were trained on because the GPO is only contracted with this particular vendor. So that's not a good place to be. So and voluntary GPO is one of the reasons we actually picked Vizient back in the day. So I'll tell you though, as far as our contract coverage, it's everywhere, every department in the hospital just about, but mainly if you wanted to bucket it, it's in pharmacy, med-surg, capital equipment, EVS, non-medical, which those are office supplies and software type of things. And then construction. A lot of people are unaware that we have a huge construction portfolio under MedAssets, and that's, roofing, ceiling tiles, light fixtures, wall coverings, paint, you name it. Something to keep in mind for the future if you have a build or an expansion in the future. So let me hit on some of the highlights of our team's duties and responsibilities. There's a whole lot of them. I'll just kind of list out some of the major ones over the next few slides. But we interact with all the levels of the hospital staff, but spend the majority of our time working with the department directors and, identifying their specific needs in their departments. And then we implement advantageous national GPO agreements or custom agreements as needed. Another one of our tasks would be providing industry updates for you guys. We send out timely updates on, tariff changes, market disruptions, shortages, product allocations, other pertinent supply chain news that you need to be aware of. So, I mean, lately, I don't have to tell you, this has been a full-time job just keeping up with the tariff changes. Every time the president makes a statement about something, we have another update. And it's been chaos for quite some time. So I don't know that that's going to stop, but we're keeping you up to date. Pretty much the day something happens with our federal government and the president, we're updating you on these things. So important to stay up to date with those. Another thing we do is compile a safe harbor report. That's an annual report required by law, but it just summarizes all your contracted purchases for the previous year, the last 12 months, and any of the fees that were paid associated with those purchases. We also have expiring contract. Is there a question? I'm sorry. Nope.
No.
I
Okay.
think so.
No.
All right. Sorry. There must have been some feedback there.
Okay.
And please stop me if I tend to rush through presentations. I've been doing it for 35 years, and I don't think that's ever going to change. So stop me if you've got a question. But the other task here, we were talking about delivering expiring contract reports. So these are, you've got contracts that expire at all times of the year. Not all of them expire at the same time. So when you've got 1,000+ contracts you're trying to monitor, it becomes pretty important, to keep track of those. So there are normally three things that can happen when you have a contract expire. One would be the GPO and the vendor can kind of kick the can down the road. In other words, they'll extend the contract with no changes for 6 months, a year, or 2 years. In that case, there's no action needed at the present time, and we'll move on. The second thing that could happen is a contract's not renewed and is terminated. So that means we're going to have to convert those affected items to a vendor that is on contract. So that would be the action item there. The third thing that can happen with an expiring contract is that the contract is totally rewritten, given a new contract number, and usually a new tier structure or something else in there that requires you to fill out another piece of paper in order to stay on that contract. So if you don't complete the required actions, you lose access to pricing. So we spend a whole lot of time catching these types of things with the vendors. So again, tedious data-driven work. Another thing we do is generate a gap analysis. This is to compare the last 12 months purchases to the current 12 months. And we're looking for gaps, missing volume. So missing reporting from the vendor usually means that you are not on the contract anymore. You've fallen off, something's happened, but every time it means that something has gone wrong and we need to find out what it is. There's a lot of detective work that's involved with what we do. We also look into the future, look at the future initiatives work plan with the hospital. This is Vizient's work plan. So we can make good decisions based on the strategy that Vizient has for those particular product areas. So we're not in the dark about what's coming up. If something's going to be renewed, again, extended or what have you. So any questions thus far? Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay, I'll keep going. Rebate tracking. That's another thing that we take care of. There's a handful of agreements that have rebates in those, and normally they're lower price than our regular contracts, and they have rebates associated with them as well. So we track those rebates and handle a lot of those rebates to send back to you. But those are good contracts, and if you use the products to fit into those, it is worthwhile looking at all the rebated contracts. That's another area that we go through with the department directors. A very important part of our process is that we prepare and deliver an annual financial improvement letter. So that kind of outlines the total value that Health Tech Supply Chain Program has documented and delivered to your hospital for the previous year. That's a pretty big undertaking every year. And we also are regularly on team meetings with our hospitals. We've got several standing meetings every month, as well as meetings and calls to, address any type of issues with any of the contracted vendors. And I mean, that could go from pricing issues, customer service issues, billing issues. So we get involved in it all. We're just another resource for you to kind of get to the bottom and resolve issues with all of the contracted vendors. We also do audits, looking at price, and that's just bouncing your pricing against the contract price. We look for errors or mismatches, obviously, in audits. We've got some more reports, we've got market share reports that we go through the hospital, and that's where we look at a specific product area and look at the number of vendors you're buying similar product from in that category. And if we can standardize to 2 vendors instead of 5 vendors, then we can normally get better pricing. That's the concept there. So those market share reports and standardization opportunities kind of go together. Tier optimization reports let us see if you're approaching a tier requirement threshold. So not all contracts have tiers, but the ones that do, we need to monitor those. And if you have on a tier 2 of a contract that requires a spend of, between $5,000 and $10,000, when you start approaching $10,000 in annual spend, this report kind of alerts us that, you're going to be able to step up a tier, and then we would need at that point to put some paperwork together and activate a new tier. So, a higher tier gets you better pricing than the other tier. Your pricing improves across the board with that particular vendor when you jump up a tier. So we monitor that. It's something that sneaks up on you, believe me. And as you're growing, as you will, that will be important to monitor. We also look at price parity reports. We want to make sure that you're receiving the same price at all your facilities. What you're paying for a widget at the hospital should be exactly the same as you're paying for it at Heritage. So I know you've had an issue with that in the past, and we are working to fix that and should be almost there very soon. I'll update you at the end of the presentation on where we are with some of that. But so we're looking for price parity across the system. The other thing that we do is announce quarterly capital equipment group buys. So as you grow, also you're going to be buying new capital equipment, and these group buys are quarterly with Vizient. They allow you to receive lower than contract pricing, and it's due to multiple hospitals buying the equipment all at the same time. So it's a nationwide push from Vizient. Every quarter, the vendors and players are different every quarter, and the modalities are different. Fourth quarter is usually imaging. All the imaging equipment is on, special there. So if that's something you can coordinate, once I get your budgets for capital equipment, I can kind of coordinate the group buys with those and see if we can time those in order to get you a better deal on capital when that time comes. Speaking of capital, we also have a capital equipment quote service, benchmarking service with a company called ECRI. We sponsor this as Health Tech. We sponsor it for all of our hospitals, so it's free service for you. But this tool is phenomenal. It gives you the lay of the land on all the major players in a particular area when you're looking at equipment. It ranks their popularity amongst the hospitals nationwide, their service cost, dependability, all of the pieces of data that you need to know to make a good decision on capital. Also look at your pricing. Obviously that's important, and tell you where you are, where you fall in the spectrum of, of the 181 capital equipment quotes they have on this particular piece of equipment. You fall in this particular threshold. So you've got a recommendation to go back and renegotiate a better price based on what they've laid out for pricing across the country. And I could tell you, just in 12 months that we've been using this product, we've saved over 600 grand in capital equipment savings. So it's just a great tool. Everybody uses it. And I know Mike and Tyler will probably be using this one as well. So Mike's already actually been trained on it, but super tool, and glad to sponsor it for our hospitals. The other thing we do is provide online training. We have a catalog that contains all of the contracts, the 3,000 or so contracts that we have overall, all in a catalog, all customized for your facility with all of your pricing points in there. It manages 25 million pricing points, so it's a lot. Very sophisticated catalog, but it gives you the ability to check pricing, and you'll be comfortable knowing you're paying the price you're supposed to. On top of that, we'll also help you with whatever needs you need in the catalog. So The other thing we do is the monthly business reviews. That's where we identify savings and opportunities, show your on and off contract purchases, things that we need to work on. So our goal is to have every transaction under a contract, a GPO contract or a local contract. If the GPO doesn't have a contract in a particular area and you utilize product in an area that they don't have a contract in, then sometimes we can put together our own agreement as health tech and cover that for you. And by jumping on a contract, there are multiple ways you're benefiting, not just good pricing, but you've got price protection, you've got terms and conditions built in there for freight and delivery, payment terms, and all those kind of things. So with these tariffs and things, the price protection has probably been one of the most valuable pieces of being on a contract. There's just so much they can do and a lot they cannot do until certain windows of time based on how that was put in the contract. So a very valuable reason and a need to use contracts every time you can. Any questions? I'm rambling. You okay?
Great.
Okay. All right. So let's look at this contract compliance reports. I just wanted to show you how valuable these are, but we're working with the directors. It keeps them engaged. They like the dialogue and the interaction back and forth every month. So it keeps everybody up to date with what's going on. And then we just kind of fill in the calendar around these monthly meetings. So, and take care of a lot of things in one fell swoop. But again, the goal is to provide savings by taking your non-contract spending, moving it to contract. A byproduct of this is your contract compliance increases and you get credits out of this. So when we find these particular errors in distribution contracts where they've actually said you've bought something that wasn't under contract, in reality you are on a contract, they just didn't have it loaded, we'll ask them to go back and load the contract correctly so the bleeding stops. And then we're going to ask them to issue a credit for the transaction and then rebill you correctly for the item. So doing those small steps and a 24-month period of measurement here, we saved over 400 grand doing that and got almost 40 grand in credit. So this little process works. It's something that we started in the beginning and it's just grown and gotten better. And it's a way to interact with your directors. Very positive. Nothing comes out of these that isn't positive in a savings. So working with all good news is just good. So, okay, let's look now at what we've specifically done at Sublette. In October is when we started the implementation process. So we sent out a note signed. Well, it wasn't Bill. It was who was there before that? I've already forgotten. Yeah.
Greg.
So he sent out Greg. Yeah, he sent out the vendor notification letter and announced the GPO change. It went to every vendor under the sun, so everyone knows that you were moving from your previous GPO to Vizient. That was step one. And that takes a good 60 days to get all the way around and people to respond back and confirm it. So all of that has taken place. We got your data originally, and boy, I got to tell you, the data was awful. It was terrible. It was mostly inventory lists and things of that nature. So we were incredibly challenged with it. We were able to match up a lot, and we've done a lot thus far with it. Now we've gone light years beyond that, but that is a reason that it took us a little while longer to get things off the ground. It normally wouldn't have taken 90 days. We could have done some of this in 45 days, but that was a challenge. The other big challenge was you're using a non-acute distribution setup. So your distributors are for doctors' offices, and that was fine for what you were. Now you're a hospital system and you need acute care distributions and you need acute care products. So that's what we're moving along here now. We've made some great progress with your distributor, so I'll talk about that in just a second. But overall, we've got about 125 contracts that we've activated. All have been approved. There's hundreds more that were auto-loaded that just by being a member, you have access to it. So we didn't have to physically activate it. That covers about $4 million in purchasing volume right now. From the data that we have. There's more out there. You've got AP reports we need to get a hold of and look at your direct spend, a lot of that kind of stuff. That's all in the works. We're going to get there. Financially, I know we've got some challenges with the systems, but we will work through that. I promise you that. I will also tell you we've electronically activated most of these, so we're getting responses back very quickly that way by doing it electronically. And we've got a paper trail on everything, which can come in handy later when contract might fall off and we've got, that proof paper trail that you should be on it and it has been confirmed. We've done all these confirmations. We've got the tier levels that you deserve and qualify for and effective date. So everything is loaded up into the system and ready to roll with the contract base now for the med surg and lab side. The rep for your distributor, Henry Schein, has been involved from day one. So they added a little bit to the process, and their legal team has added a whole bunch to the process. We have an agreement that I hope to have this week for Bill to sign. The effective date on it is 3/2, so it's got to get here pretty darn soon. But we'll go live with Henry Schein on the new agreement on 3/2, but I'll get to that next. I'm excited about that, so I keep getting to it apparently. And anyway, we'll have more to do once everything's confirmed and loaded. We've got to continue to monitor all of those contracts, direct and through distribution. And in the meantime, there's always new contracts coming into the scene, and we've got to get those plugged in based on what you use. So a lot happened in the last 3 months. So the Henry Schein agreement that I've alluded to twice now, I think, we finally finalized this thing, and it's going to be for all your med surg and lab products. And you already had that relationship with them. They know you, they know your people, they know your business, they know your challenges. You've got challenges with shipping and things. They've already got all of that worked out, so we did not have to reteach or learn, a new setup with a new distributor. So that's a positive. This new agreement is going to be a 3-year term, effective, as I said, on 3/2. It's got an incredibly friendly out clause. I couldn't believe how easy it is to get out of it. So there's nothing to lose with this one. We've negotiated a much lower cost of goods on all your contracted products. So you're incentivized to move everything to contract. There is no cap on what Schein can mark your product up if it is a non-contract. So I can't think of any better incentive than that right there to move everything to contract. That's right where you want it. So any of that non-contract spend, you want to clean it up and move it to contract, and it's all controlled at that point. So we're looking good there. We've got some work to do. We're going to move some Henry Schein products, your Band-Aids and things that they make, over to national branded products like Johnson & Johnson, things of that nature. So quality of product should improve, which should improve the quality of care you're delivering to the patient. So all in all, that works hand in hand. So you've got about a little over $1 million in spend currently with Schein. So the fact that we don't have to change the distributor at all, make no changes whatsoever on distribution, is lovely. Lovely. So the next area that we conquered was food service. Now, you had 2 separate accounts. You had Sublette Hospital and you've got the Heritage account, the long-term care. Both of those were separate accounts. The hospital pricing, we bounced up against our program with Vizient, 34% reduction in pricing. That's huge. You don't see those numbers much anymore like that. Now, Heritage was actually on a non-acute GPO of some sort, I believe, and the savings was still 27% for them. Now, your pricing is going to be the same for both facilities, but when we did these market baskets, this is a snapshot in time. Food prices change every week, every month, so you've got to take a slice of time and do an analysis like that. So this is great. You're going to have a 30% reduction in costs on your dietary products, and that's only going to grow as you grow. Food adds up. So already using Cisco, again, no changes needed for distributor. That's gold. That's as good as you can get. So I know I've kind of rushed through. It looks like I'm 4 minutes early, so I did pretty good. You guys have any questions?
I
That's
don't
a
have
lot
any
of stuff I
questions,
just threw
Jeff,
at
but
you.
I'm surprised. I had no idea there were so many benefits to being part of such a large GPO. The analysis and reporting capabilities are impressive. So thanks for talking through some of those.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, but we're proud of it. We, you know, and I can tell you, you can be a member of any GPO and none of them are going to be able to help you and work with you like we do. There, I mean, I can tell you that as honest. I've been doing this for a long time. That's the value that you're getting. Nobody's going to work this stuff like we do. So you're getting that benefit, but you know, your people are also learning. It's a learning experience, and we love to teach. So when we go away one day, your people are going to know how to do this stuff. So that's important to learn. And I know a lot of your resources came from the physician's offices and don't know the acute world that well yet. That's going to change, and it already is. So I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm real happy with the growth, and your people are great to work with.
Great to hear. Any questions?
Is it a particular time of year, Jeff, that you issue that report to us on an annual basis?
The savings or the letter for financial improvement just went out. You won't get one yet because you don't have enough track record yet, but
Okay.
you'll get one next time. That usually comes in February. We've got to close out the fourth quarter of the previous year before we can get some of that done, but that'll be forthcoming. And then all the other reports are already heading your way. And I think I just put Bill on the new list for all these tariff updates and all that good stuff. So you're in the loop now on everything.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. If I can help you in any way, give me a shout.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks
you.
for taking some time with us tonight.
You bet.
Thank you,
Have a
Jeff.
great meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Too. Yeah.
That's. Yes, very good. Exciting. Yes.
Good, how are you? We've had all 4 seasons in one day today. I wasn't outside long enough to know that part, but I wasn't even, but every time I went out or came in, it was a different season.
Yeah, I experienced that.
When it comes time to present, yes, you put the thing up there. And, or you can join from yours so you can maneuver it yourself and then share your screen. Oh, so I think, and then I join the meeting and then just share. Absolutely. Up, join it right now. Join it right now. So mute that. Yes, for sure. And then just have it pulled up like on your, you know, your bar. So, oops, sorry. So I pulled up here. And then you can do the thing. So that's it. Okay, so go back to the teams. I gotta go to the first slide. No one wants to see. I don't know what happened in that picture. Looks like it's poorly Photoshop. Okay, so now what am I doing? Going back to your teams. Okay. Where we did, I can see very well. So go back to teams, right? Yep, and then you're gonna say share.
Oh, I see where it's at. Thank you.
And then it'll say share screen or window, and you can just say share screen, and then just click over to your end. And then you can screen and stuff. I mean, I don't like doing it, but well, then you want to say scroll down to index, then whatever. Yeah.
Okay, now.
That's just like keep it.
Yeah, another thing I sent to you, my facility assessment, is that here? Get rid of you. And we'll get rid of you. How do I pull that up? So I go here to the mail.
It's on their document, yes.
Go to the mail.
And if you want to say sent.
May I go down to sent?
Just type
Type in JN.
Yeah.
There's the house. And so it's earlier. Oh,
And I can shrinky.
yeah.
Okay.
And then, so if you share your screen, you can just toggle between the two documents.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order and welcome those in attendance and thank you for joining us. It's Wednesday, February 25th. This is a regular meeting and we will start by pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We need to set the agenda this evening, but I do have one ad. That was a last moment ad. And that is under new business. I'd like to add a transfer of interest funds for the board to consider. And then are there any other questions, additions from the admin team that the board that didn't make it on the agenda? And I'll ask for a motion to set the agenda, please.
I'm sure I would make a motion to set the agenda with the addition of transfer of interest accrued funds added to new business.
Any direction for the motion? A second. And a second. Any further questions, concerns? All those in favor of the motion to set the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will dive in. First item of business is consent agenda. We have one policy this evening for review and approval of qualifications of selected health practitioners. Has everyone had an opportunity to review that? It was an easy one tonight. It was an easy one.
When I pulled up.
We don't get
agenda, I
that
was
very
like,
often. I swear.
I'm gonna go to bed early.
Anybody have questions for the team about that policy? It's pretty straightforward.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion
Madam Chair, I'll second.
and a second. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, on the motion to approve the consent agenda, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We then have just one set of meeting minutes, plus I believe 2 executive session meeting minutes to be approved. And those are in your materials, because everyone had an opportunity to review those. Everything look good? Anybody have questions?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 28th, as well as executive session minutes.
Okay, thank you. A motion. Second. And a second. Are there any further comments or questions? All right, on the motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 28th and the executive session minutes, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to public comment. I'll open up the floor for anyone who would like to speak this evening. Everyone's always- No one? Okay, looks like we don't have anyone I can see on Teams chat. All right, well, we'll forge ahead then. Next time on the agenda is committee reports. And building committee is up first. I'm gonna toss that one to Lena for just a quick construction update. Lena, can you hear me?
I can. I apologize, Madam Chair. I couldn't find my mute button fast enough.
Okay. Do you have any reports you'd like to give the board this evening regarding construction?
You know, there's just not a lot to report. We've been just buttoning things up. There's a couple loose ends that are still, we're waiting on parts for or doors for. But other than that, it's getting pretty close. We did have a couple of things on our fire suppression that Tyler Bell is working on to get those fixed. But that just has to do with how things are being displayed on our alarm system and so forth. Nothing functional, just more or less the technical pieces. But other than that, we're getting really close to buttoning everything up.
Thanks, Lena. As you guys know, Lena's kind of been handling the construction piece. I've kind of been trying to stick with the budget piece. And from the budgetary side, we're getting really close to. Just got a few last minute change orders that we're trying to get filed in order to send in our final pay app and then prepare for closing. So I'm hopeful that we can get through closing within the next 30 days. We'll see. So that's kind of where we're at there, but we're sitting in a good spot. So
I guess with that, with the closing, like, will we get some type of report along with that, just to kind of know like where we landed, place and everything?
yes, yeah, I believe we'll get some final accounting. Okay, so.
Madam Chair, we'll actually get a final change order from Layton that will indicate like the final GMP and so forth. So that will lay it all out.
Thanks, Lena. Any other questions? Anyone have questions? Then we will move on to foundation. Carrie.
Excuse me, I brought you guys the art books. We're discussing his artwork.
How are you?
Great.
Good.
Oops. So I can be pretty short and sweet. The foundation has 1.4 million in the money market account and $2,055 in the checking account. We've paid 3.3 million in USDA applications to date. We had a couple housekeeping items. One is that the outdoor landscaping, both the foundation board and this board approved up to 500,000. We've spent 284,000 to date, but that leaves 215,000 that is still allocated in the foundation for landscaping, but we weren't sure if there were any more costs.
And that's a great question.
Okay,
Until we get everything turned in, I would just ask that you hold off on
okay,
reallocating that elsewhere. Okay, if you could, until we have all of our change orders completed and ready for closing.
100%.
And then I'll communicate with the foundation board if that works.
perfect, yeah, we'll table that. We just didn't want to leave that much money in limbo, right? John. Dave Bell, Delsa Allen, and David Claren, who are your art committee, came to the foundation board meeting to talk about artwork. If you guys have this spreadsheet here on your board docs, I have a couple paper copies. I just want to pull those up and talk through. I don't have a list.
Thank you.
Yeah. The first page is the 2025, the original call for artists that we did, and the foundation board talked at length about how much the artwork's been appreciated, how it really sets the building apart, how it's lovely, those sorts of things. So in this first spreadsheet, that beige column is that USDA funding for artwork. So that's artwork that we purchased with USDA funds. And then the column right to the right of that is funds that we use to kind of rent the artwork for a year. We knew we had 88,000 square feet and there was no way we'd be able to fill it all nicely. And so we rented a lot of artwork. So the first two pages are what we did, and you can see at the bottom, we spent 24,000 of USDA money. That includes the $5,000 sound baffle artwork above the dining room. That Healing Waters piece by Kyla, and then 19,000 in, rental fees, basically. The third page is the 2026 art call, and this is what they are proposing. Dave Bell and Timothy O'Leary want to donate their pieces. So they're each worth a couple thousand, and they would just like to see them go to the hospital. I think as we start to contact the artists and remind them that, we've rented for a year, thank you for your time. We might see more donated. Hopefully would be the goal. Then the other pieces we're suggesting, so the value is that third column. So like Delta Allen's piece is worth 1,000. We've paid her the $500 fee for 1 year rental. So if we pay her another 500, we fully purchased. So the middle of that are pieces that we're proposing to fully purchase. The biggest one in the middle is Kathy Whippler's Cabbing Time. That's the one that's about 8 feet by 6 feet that hangs in the Heritage Home, right as you walk in. And so it's a stunning piece, and Dawn's gotten a lot of great feedback on it. The residents love it. So that would be an investment, but she's an incredible artist. And some of these we were thinking like Kay Meeks, Ruth Brown, there's people on this list that aren't going to be producing artwork forever. And so we just kind of wanted to capture, we spent a lot of money in the original buying Ruth Rawhausers because we wanted to have those treasures forever. So that's the thing. And then the bottom of the column is the Heritage Home respite rooms, which are like the little mini living rooms. We proposed $1,000 to kind of redo those. And then they wanted to do a kid artwork haul. And so the theme has been art and healing. And we'll keep that theme going, and we'll keep it to Wyoming artists. We want to take care of our own, but we thought it'd be great to have kid artwork as you walk in the door on that first big wall. So the kids get $50 each, which in their worlds, but we would, purchase their artwork and have that. And then we would refresh the hospital art wall, which is the other half, and then the Heritage Home. Going forward in the future, we don't think we would have to do this again. I think with about 2 years under us and some pieces donated and we start to collect, I think in the future, we would just kind of focus on those big black walls, the main wall in the Heritage Home and the main wall in the lobby. So in the future, I would think the ask would be closer to $4,000, $5,000. But we felt like we have some incredible pieces, and it's just been such a community thing. The foundation, I wasn't sure how they'd take this, and Sid Stanfield said, "Is this enough? Do you need more money for artwork?" And so I was like, "No, just give what you're asking." But so the foundation board, contingent on your approval, approved the 20,000. It would also, there considers $400 there to update the book. And then it's up to you guys. It's been on board docs for a minute, so I hope I'm not surprising you. And again, we've just had such good feedback on the artwork. I think everyone does truly feel like it's healing. It makes the space, it really sets the tone, so. Happy to stand for questions.
It's very well done.
Yeah, they've done a great job. It's really nice.
Anyone have questions for Carrie? You're looking for some action from us?
Yeah.
To support that.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to authorize or approve for the foundation to support the proposed 2026 call for artwork and plans as presented, up to $20,000.
Thank you, Ashley. We have a motion. A second. Second, are there any questions or comments from anyone? Okay. Motion to authorize the foundation to move forward with the 2026 art fall, proposed budget up to $20,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
We'll get a call out for one here. In our old business, we elected officers and they stayed exactly the same. So Sid Stample is still the chair of the foundation. Nancy Espenscheid is the vice chair. Luann is the secretary and Sharon Roach is the very, very busy treasurer. We're working on a press release and a brochure showing the assisted living project that we're tackling. And Marilyn Jensen's been traveling, so I'm meeting with her next week. But we should be able to pick that off. I think Bill's tasked us with raising 400,000, of which 200,000 would be Maryland, possibly, and then you raise the rest, so. And then we ran that marketplace, little snack area, but you guys tasked it, no one had the bandwidth to deal with this with the marketplace, and so you tasked the foundation with taking it and making it something, so there's a lot of good treats in there. And we've made a $2,100 profit in our first 3 months, but I think we're kind of figuring out what people eat, how healthy they eat, what kind of snacks they want at midnight. Some items have just been, a wash, we let them go, some really, you can't keep as sticky, salt and vinegar chips. I buy gazillions and we can't keep them in. Someone got 20 Oreos last weekend. So as we dial it in, maybe we'll get better profit margin, but it's serving its purpose. So you tasked us with it, we ran a report. Any other questions for the foundation? No, great. Thank you all.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, finance.
Jameson. Jameson attended. He was swimming with the sharks and said, Steve ran the show, but I can say from like a 50,000 foot purchase. Visits are down. It's a typical cycle that we see. It's winter time and so less people are coming in. And it reflects in the financials. So there's an air of optimism that the future will bring more patients and more money, but Steve's got to tell us.
Janet, are you able to bring that up at all or not?
Thank
You don't need to. If
Sure.
everybody's got
You
that.
just start and I'll grab it.
So Jameson kind of referenced that I'm starting to include some statistical data and hopefully that helps understand the actual financials as we go through it. Dr. Burnett sitting here said, is this a picture of the Tetons? I said, that exceeds my artistic capability. Yes, that's the Tetons and the foothills and so yeah, just the inpatient data and, it was very helpful to have Vicky at the finance committee meeting because she was able to shed some light on some of the seasonality that I wouldn't be aware of because I haven't been here through an entire season, but apparently in the wintertime, the seasonality is a dip in volumes and then that comes back up in the summertime. And not only is that probably going to be prevalent in the clinics, but also in the hospital bed as well. As snowbirds leave for the winter, a lot of those would typically be candidates for inpatient activity in the hospital. So, I think that was very telling and I appreciated Vicky's perspective on that because it was a perspective that I couldn't share. So that's the inpatient. The outpatient visits surprisingly have not declined much since we opened the hospital. They have increased pretty steadily with a little bit of a dip in November, but have been pretty steady through the 6 months, 7 months that the hospital has been open. The ED and urgent care visits, the ED visits started out strong in August and dipped a little bit for a couple of months and have been steadily coming back up. I was a little bit surprised that the urgent care in Pinedale, while it's come down, I was surprised it hasn't come down more, given the ED being open. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's a thing. Urgent care in Marlton continues to increase. Now, Vicki also pointed out that Dr.
John said.
John said when he's in the urgent care, he's also seeing his primary care visits. So it might be a little bit distorted. It's not purely urgent care on the screen line. So just keep that in. EMS, what I've included here is both the billable runs and the non-billable runs, and then the dotted line that you see there is the percentage of non-billable. And obviously that's quite high. Half of our runs are not billable for a variety of reasons. Patient might refuse to transfer, those types of things. But I want to continue to keep this in front of us so we see what that is. If there are particular areas, I haven't had a chance to talk to BJ, but if there are particular areas that we can address to limit the amount of non-billable runs, because there's a cost with no revenue associated.
Yeah, I was a little puzzled by that one, just because I expected, when we became hospital, to see that change. Do you see
So it has
number?
over what it was when we were just clinics and urgent care. But there are still runs that we do. So for example, if we respond to a call, go to a patient's home and they choose not to be transported, we can't bill for that.
Right.
And then there are certain transports to the airport that are non-billable depending on whether they come through the ER or not. So that's what Steve is referring to. We want to work with BJ to understand more fully when a run is billable and when it is not, what's the criteria, so that we can minimize the non-billable or maximize the billable.
And that should improve, if I'm understanding everything that we've worked for correctly, once we receive our COD designation, correct? We should be able to capture.
I don't know if that will change. That designation really doesn't impact, in my opinion, what runs we.
Right, billing, but it will impact our ability to recognize some of the EMS related costs
Okay,
and get reimbursed for that.
okay,
So
that's what I.
in a indirect way, we will see benefit from critical access on EMS services.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
I've also got an ambulance update in the rev cycle when I do mine. And I'm not sure if it's been discussed with you here. So,
No.
I don't think, well, it's gonna address some of what you're talking about now.
Okay.
So if I may, there's one other project that I'm working on, not quite ready to bring it to you yet, but just to sort of prepare you. It's my sense that when we look at only our volumes, that the number of rigs we justify is 2. And so I'm not suggesting that we should cut. Please don't take that. But what I am suggesting that I believe that the county has a responsibility to step in and fund part of the EMS program so that we look beyond just the volume that's justified and we look instead at the square miles that are needing to be covered. And so BJ is already working for me, looking at what are the annualized costs for the 3rd rig. And then I'll present that to you. And with your permission, then I'm going to go to the county commissioners and make a formal proposal that they subsidize the 3rd rig. So that's part of the strategy related to how do we address our $1.5 million that we've talked about. So that would be whether you look at the expense side or the revenue side. It's a significant number, more than $500,000 for a single rig for a year. So it's work that we're doing. It's part of our, how do we save money or generate more revenue? So look for more information, and I expect to have that ready for you at the March 4th.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the statistical data here, you can see the imaging volumes, MRIs have been steadily increasing. That's the bottom line on this particular chart. CT, I think we're seeing some of the seasonality there. And then same with the X-ray, although that's been pretty steady over the course of the past several weeks. On the next page, ultrasound, which is the service that we provided before the hospital opened. Been pretty steady there. Mammo, that's back to the Tetons again. I think they're a big increase in that it's come down. I would hope that October is when we saw the peak. That's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So it's not unusual to see kind of a peak for that particular modality in most organizations. The bone density, pretty low volumes, but steady once we got off the ground August, it jumped up in September. It's been pretty steady since. Make sure I'm on the right page. Lab tests. Again, a steady increase, and then now that we're into the winter season, we've seen kind of a decline. I attribute that mostly to the seasonality. Long-term care days, we must be in season for long-term care. It may not. Hopefully, we can stay at this high peak season that we're in right now. And Don will probably have more to say about that. So the next chart is also long-term care, the census data, and then the admits and discharges. So very strong results in those areas. In the clinics, we had very high volumes in July, and I think that was more a case of catching up on some of the billing processes before we changed systems in August. So there may have been an increase in the clinics to see more patients before we open the hospital as well, because there's a lot of activity around that. But I think a lot of it is catch up in the revenue cycle side, catching up all those visits that hadn't been captured yet before we switched systems. So that's kind of the statistical data that I like using that statistical data because it shows the trends. It shows where we're headed, where we've been. After we have a couple of years of data, you'll see that seasonality really. Previous organizations that I've worked for that have had seasonal stuff, it's really quite evident and helps in predicting different things, both for your revenues and the budgets, but the cash flow as well. So that seasonal stuff is taking place, you can plan for that.
And it's, I think if I can add to that, it's also going to be critically important for the strategic plan. You know, so when we do the strategic plan, when we decide when we want to do that, that will also come through in the management action plan. So those seasons are really critical.
So looking at the actual financial statement, you can see that January was a little bit lower than what was, excuse me, what was budgeted even in the revised budget from a gross revenue standpoint. I will point out, it came up at the finance committee meeting yesterday that the clinic budget looked very high, even on a revised standpoint. And I looked at that today, and yeah, there was an error. We had some outpatient revenues in the clinic that should have been in the outpatient line instead. So I have revised that each month going forward, including in January. So the clinic variance is still unfavorable. It's still below what we had budgeted. Unfortunately, when I put that revised budget together, I wasn't aware of the seasonality. Question I probably should have asked in retrospect. It's easy to see that now, but I didn't realize it at the time. In a lot of places, winter is actually a higher month seasonality wise, but with a small population and people leaving, either snowbirds or leaving to visit family members during the holidays and things like that. I didn't account for it very well. But the total gross revenues, those didn't change. I just changed some where it was distributed within the budget. So we're about $500,000 short in gross revenues, which were offset significantly by deductions in contractual allowances. And there were three elements that created that unexpected decrease in the contractual allowances. One of them is the estimate I used for clinic allowances for Medicare was overstated. And I didn't realize that until I got audit data to work with. Once I got the audit data, I was able to revise some of those allowance calculations. Instead of just using how's the wind blowing here, I actually had real data to use. And so that resulted in about a $400,000 reduction in the allowance calculations. We also had some revenue increases that the calculations were already built on the revenue, but they weren't in our revenues. If that makes any sense. So we have accounts receivable data that I get out of Ocean that is accurate. But due to some mapping issues from Ocean to NetSuite, the revenues weren't reflected. So we gained another $400,000 in revenue that the calculations were already made. So that reduces the percentage, if I can say it like that. I know it, I can go into real detailed calculation, but I don't think that's appropriate.
If you'd like me to,
Yeah, I type numbers all day long, so. Finally, we did have some payer mix improvement. So our commercial payers went up, Medicare, Medicaid went down a little bit, so that impacts each month, but also on a cumulative basis, the allowance calculation. So that was another $165,000. So we had a total of about $800,000 of reductions in the allowance calculations from those three elements. And our gross revenue for the month was just the hospital was about $2.7 million, hospital and clinic. But our receivables only went up $1.2 million. So the gap between, we're starting to collect, I think, is what that reflects. And so that helps also usually because you don't have these older accounts that you're writing off to bad debt or not collecting at all. So overall, we had a pretty significant improvement in the allowance calculations. And it's more time than I wanted to spend on that, but I think it's important to understand why it's so different than the budget. So our net operating revenue ended up being almost $1 million, $926,000 better than the revised budget. On the expense side, we were about 3% over on our expenses. Professional fees, which includes some of the health tech invoices, we had 2 months worth of invoices processed in January instead of typically 1 month. So that was kind of the overage there. You can see the impact of the ARC elimination, at least the beginning of that impact. So I had ARC in there for the entire month of January, but I have that for June. So some improvement there. Interest expense, it was a small variance relative to some of the other variances, but I wanted to point that out because we should be pretty close on that one because we know what our interest expense is going to be month to month. And we missed an accrual of about $23,000, which is what the variance is. So that kind of explains that one. Contract labor remains pretty high. We did have some carryover November, December invoices in the contract labor also. So there were a few more invoices in there, but we are getting some of that stuff caught up and cleaned up and hopefully going forward, we won't have those types of variances. So like I said, we were about 3% over on operating expenses. Then on the non-operating income, a little bit, I had an error in the budgeting. I had included in January and also in December the mill levy income. So we're going to be running short on that one most of the year unless we get another nice surprise with higher mill levy revenues later this year. So our total bottom line, we did do a little bit better than budget, about $200,000. And from an EBITDA standpoint, only a $67,000 loss versus some of the big losses we had in the previous months. So that kind of wraps up the income statement. On the balance sheet side, I've had a couple of conversations with Mariah. Unfortunately, I was gone for 2 weeks, so I was trying to catch up yesterday and today, get some of this stuff squared away. On the AR, we're collecting about between $700,000 and $800,000 per month of actual cash receipts for the hospital and clinics. That does not include long-term care. And we collect about $360,000 a month from long-term care. Plus, we have miscellaneous receipts for some other things like the cafeteria, some other areas. So We're running close to $1 million of receipts, cash received on a monthly basis, which is still far short of our expenses. So we still got some work to do. We are removing tonight the 100% claim hold, which has been holding a lot of our claims, including all of our inpatient claims, not just Medicare, but some of our commercial claims as well. The inpatient claims are about $1.6 million in backlog on those alone. So that claim hold gets released, we'll start dropping those bills going through the clearinghouse. Mariah's done a great job eliminating a lot of issues that would have created denials right away. So though most of those have been taken care of, will we still see some denials? Probably. We might have some provider not enrolled issues. I think we've already had some of those. But hopefully most of the claims that start dropping by the end of this week will go through and we'll start seeing payments within 10 to 15 days from Medicare. We've been getting payments from commercial insurers, but like I said, we still have a backlog of some of those claims as well. We have a lot of ambulance claims that haven't gone out, even in the legacy system. So Doreen's been trying to clean up all those ambulance charges. So not only do we have bills to go out, but we have revenue that hasn't been recognized for a lot of them. So we're making improvements. Hopefully in March, I can give you even a much better report. The OCHN days in accounts receivable, that's a pretty common measure for hospitals and healthcare organizations, is to measure the days of accounts receivable. At the end of November, we're 86 days. We want to be in the 40 to 50 day range. At the end of December, we were at 110. And at the end of January, we're 113. So that rate has slowed. It's not coming down, but hopefully in March, I'll be able to report that in February, we saw a decline. Maybe not because we're just dropping these claims this week, but should be able to. Yeah, certainly by the end of March, we should start seeing that number come down. I know that that's a specific goal that I had for Mariah when we hired her, is to reduce by, I think it was 30 or 40% off the top of my head. I don't exactly remember our days in accounts receivable.
Yeah.
So that's a goal that she's working towards. Hopefully she can attain that very quickly. Questions?
Your data is impeccable. I really like the format. It's easy to understand. It's clean. It's precise. Thank you.
You're welcome. And hey, this is the first blush at it. I've got some, I want to add some balance sheet stuff like the days in accounts receivable. I didn't have a chance to put that together for this particular presentation, but I do think it's helpful. It's especially the trending, to be able to look at that. It helps explain what we have on our income statement on our balance sheets. Thank you for coming.
For Steve. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I have one question. Did health ticket get paid twice last month?
Yes,
What?
2 months worth, but not, you didn't get paid for it. The invoice for December didn't get processed.
Okay, so can I go through it? Well, pause not like that.
You're welcome to clean up your pockets.
But we have, I hope you've recognized that we got the ACH stuff squared away and it's being paid in time.
Thank you very much.
All right, that puts us at the end of our committee reports, and we will move on to leadership reports. And first, we have Dawn with a good chunk. Well, we have a chair up here for you too.
No. Dawn.
Oh, Dawn, yeah, sorry.
Dawn.
I did get confused for a second.
No, you're first.
No, when I present, sorry.
Oh, that's great too.
So we'll start with the phone. I am passing out the Carriage Herald. You guys know the newsletter, but what I want to draw your attention to is the second to the last page. Because as you all know, we have read into the VA product line a bit more about what that really means is we're serving veterans. And this particular picture and this particular person is really special to us. He belongs to our pharmacist. And celebrated his 100th birthday. And we do, all of our veterans get a quote like that. So you will have seen maybe on social media things where in a true VA system, should a veteran pass away, they are draped with the American flag and as they head out. We are not that, we're community cares, but in leaning into that, when our veterans arrive, especially if they're going to be there for a while, so this is not typically the hospice program, but rather the long-term care program, they are granted, not granted, a quilt. And these ones have been made by the Big Pine Quilter. So if you happen to see Deanne Bradley or any of the other gals in that, please remember to say thank you because it is really so important. And also happy 100th birthday to Norm. Okay, now Jan tells me I have to push the share your screen button. Try to do that.
Need help, Tom?
Yeah. Hey, are we about? There you are. Okay, there we go. This old dog is learning some new tricks. Cannot be happy. Hey, here to show them. Then which one's things. We do give our reports based on those pillars of service, which is like
Don, if you go to slideshow over on the top.
yeah, that's great. And now we're
I'm sorry, along that file home insert line, slideshow. And then say from beginning, all the way to the left. And then it'll take the whole screen. There you go.
census has risen from the average of 32 our last fiscal year, 41 end of November, or 41 the end of November, and was 47 at the time that this slide was created. It is 46 today. Memory care is full currently, and it is full. Our Medicare revalidation has been, and that should say submitted versus completed. I am waiting on the Meridian acceptance letter so that we can go on and enroll in our Medicaid. Our New Year's Eve celebration was a hit. I'm sure you recognize that gentleman there. And his family band came to play. There were a little over 55 people in attendance, so that was pretty great for us. Okay, we are going to do, moving past December and January, a little change in service plans. And really what this means is that, good. Sure. There we go. Okay. Prior to moving up, we were a little bit concerned about filling these beds. So we launched an advertising, campaign, if you will, went to see many hospitals, nursing homes from other neighboring counties. And so we serve as a waiting room, if you will, for both Star Valley Health and St. John's. They have pretty big waiting lists. So what we would do is we would even help with transportation, bringing people from the hospital. They would stay with us, even though we knew all along their preference was to be either at Sage Living or Star Valley Health. And I'm happy to report that was a really great program, such that we are now at 47 beds. And what we don't want to do is service our neighbors at the cost of servicing our county. So we're leaning out of that a little bit just through attrition. Obviously we are not going to kick anybody out, but as people leave, we're marketing that to the extent that we have been, so you should be aware of that. And I think that kind of covers that. I promise I'm pushing the next slide button. There we go. I do want you to be aware that in terms of service, it is not just us servicing this county. And pictured here is our resident council president, Maggie Melendez. I put her full name up there, but she prefers Maggie. And to her, service meant giving back to the community. You guys have heard before that we do resident council, and our resident council in total said, the taxpayers, this whole community has leaned into us so much, we want to get back. So Maggie is now volunteering on a regular basis at the Food Basket Food Distribution Center and Thrift Store. And I just think that's great because here we frequently think that nursing home residents are more towards the end of their life and they maybe just sit up there, play bingo, whatever. But that's really not true. And I think Maggie highlights how they're still very vibrant and active members of the community. So what's next in our service pillar? In your board packet, you could read this, maybe not everybody else can. But our gentlemen are gonna just really continue to offer some great advice. Norm tells us for Valentine's Day to make sure you tell your wife she is beautiful every day. Whilst our other gentleman says stay single. Expanding activity opportunities, which we're going to talk about later. So in our quality pillar, we had 11 total calls. The weight loss did not transfer over, and I'll admit this is a screenshot, so I think my pen was probably too light on that. But we only have 3 weight loss and 6 weight gain. So the weight loss, none of those were desired, but all the weight gains were. Very happy about that. Psychotropic medications, specifically antipsychotics, will be covered in a different slide. We did have 3 medication errors. They represented 1 incident and 10 total concerns, most of which are skin tears and abrasions. But you will see we had 2 house-acquired pressure ulcers. And so this required, frankly, that we take our beautiful new recliners and switch them out for maybe the less beautiful, but a little softer recliners from the Sublette. What we were noticing is that certain residents, not all, were getting pressure ulcers on their spine because the outward curvature of the new recliners that we chose. Luckily, Bill has instituted the dormitory program, and so it's a switch for switch. So the dorms have blue, not all, but our more fragile residents now have the brown ones from both, so they're switching it out. So don't despair when you get up there, some people, but it does not fit the design. That's okay. And as you know, every year our facility picks a PIP, a process improvement projects, part of our QAPI plan. And for 2026, we're going to do the dining experience. What we noticed is the tray service, and this is plating per plate, much like you would at a hospital, right? So you get the whole plate and then you cart it in the warming carts all the way down to the nursing home. And they sat in those carts for a minute till the nursing home residents come. But by nature, when you have a plate, you have this much lasagna on the plate, not a pan. That sits on those warming trays, and in the warming oven, the lasagna turns into something that is a little less like your mother makes, you know. So we found that food quality was a big problem for our residents. They had concerns about it. They talked about it at resident council, and resident council said, this feels very institutional. We don't like getting it the same way we would in a hospital. We want to go back to family style serving. And a beautiful lady by the name of Catherine Briggs, known to some people here, donated a steam table. So we are going back to steam table service, and we just started today. So hopefully next time we meet, we'll be able to report that as a successful program. No, that's not the case today, but that's okay. We are moving onward and upward. A couple of things I want to draw your attention to. This is quality art national measures. Those of you who've been with me for a while know that CMS actually does our quarterly quality measures, right? So these are not things I fabricated, but rather data I got from them. And for this particular quarter, My actual opinion is that we have changed, we've done an 855, that change of ownership process and changed locations. Somehow, unless you guys have done something and have not told me, your administrator changed in January of 2026. The problem with that is that decreases 18 points on your staffing automatically and can trigger a focus survey. So I have a query into CMS about that because I'm still here. And I really have been for a long time, like, look at that. So anyway, we'll get that straightened out. Don't worry about it, but it is a little bit of an issue. This is CMS's take on our current staffing measures. Now, what I want you to take from this slide is that in 2025, remember, even though the mandate was not, sort of, is it here, is it not here, we leaned into that program. We had that 1.55 nurse hours per resident per day in the RN field, right? And since moving over to the Heritage and the pause on that, or actually it's not going to come into effect at all, we did switch out some of those RNs for LPN. So you'll see a little bit of a dip here, but it does not represent a dip in your actual humans working there, but rather I will go on record always as saying that a really good LPN is really, really good for long-term care. But what you want to know about is the travelers, right? How many do we have? And I'm a Gold Star girl, so I feel like I'm moving in the right direction. We only have 4 CNAs, we do have 2 LPNs, and we have 3 RNs. We're running a class right now, which is the next slide. Oh, not quite the next slide, we'll get to it in a minute. But I think that the nurses will stay with us in a while. I do feel like this is an area where we need to lean into those younger nurses coming up. But we will be having those other 5 for at least the next quarter. The other quality measure I want you to be aware of, because if you see these, now these are public data, so this is part of the reason I want to go over it with you. I highly doubt anybody in the community is saying, I wonder what nursing homes look like. But just in case, this is one of the slides I think you ought to be aware of. This is antipsychotic use in nursing homes. And the reason it's important is because a long time ago, nursing homes did have the culture, if you will, of over-medicating their patients, leaving them sitting in chairs. This is the, really older lady you see in many pictures, right? So one of the things that nationwide CMS really wants us to pay attention to is antipsychotic use. The black line there represents nationwide use. The blue line is Wyoming trends, and the red line is us. So on the surface, you're like, that's way too high. Like on the surface, if I don't know what's going on in our facility, I would say that's way too high. Look how much higher we are than everybody else. But I want to remind the board that we lead into 2 different programs that many do not, right? We do VA hospice, which by nature tends to come with a little more antipsychotic use. That's just, I will just say that's what we've been seeing, right? And then the other one is actually our connections program. Remember, we've talked about this quite a lot. We're part of the geriatrics connection program run by Martha Stern. And this is such a beautiful program to be a part of. She has come with many of her colleagues to tour our facilities, specifically memory care. And some of that starts off with a higher antipsychotic use to help with transition. And then we work on tapering that off. So be aware, and that's, you'll see that the red line is going a bit down. I suspect because of the nature of what the programs we're leaning into, we're always going to be a little bit higher. And what that means is that we have to make sure our documentation, our monitoring, and our patient care is all that much better. Because I know when states come in to survey us, they're going to look at that. Okay, so let's go back to staffing. These are beautiful nursing students. We're so lucky to have them on both sides. These are our last Western class. I think this is probably even the same picture from the last time we spoke, but we have since then run another 2 sets of people through. So we are getting quite a few nursing students through. We just spent 90 days ago, and we're already on to our 3rd set of people coming. Marissa and I have a meeting with Nightingale Nursing. That is more of an online program, but they tend to have they try to have a robust local presence. And so we're going to talk about being one of their clinical sites as well. And of course, the referral incentive continues. Okay, this I'm switching gears because I just got the new. This is the one I gave you, so don't pay attention to the one. Because this is a better. First of all, it says Heritage Home instead of Sublette Center. But second of all, the one I really want to bring your attention to, and apologies to people in the group, but is that top left-hand corner, which is our Medicare Part A business. And what you'll see is January is a better month, right? The thing that is important for us as an organization is to realize that some of that revenue will be able to be retained on the cost side as you're leaning into swing bed business, right? Med A, swing bed, somewhat synonymous. So we're keeping these people in our organization. We're able to do their rehabilitation services, help get them. And so that will be a shared business moving forward because you're not gonna want all of your 8 beds to be swing beds. So this is a space where we can share and it's a really great revenue source. So that's really the main reason I wanted you to see this particular one. Average census increases, again, January 45. I think we'll even be higher than that when the February numbers come. Remainder, I think are pretty much things you guys have all seen before. I don't think anything is remarkable. The VA service line, as we spoke about last time, tends to have that increase because we lead into the VA hospice program. And I have to tell you that is a program about which I'm really proud. We are really servicing veterans towards their end of life. And this is, remember I talked to you in the past that your regular VA service line, you have to qualify, right? You have to be 70% service connected disabled as determined by the VA to lean into that program. But the hospice program is significantly more lenient. So we are being able to reach a larger portion of veterans, not just in Sublette County, but we have Sweetwater County. We've been able to help people in Teton County. So this is a really important thing that the nursing home is doing. And so thank you guys for giving us the ability to do that. When growth catches up. One of the priorities at Heritage Home is the preservation of both physical and psychosocial well-being. So currently we offer a variety of both active and passive activities. Obviously, watching a movie, passive. Hitting a balloon, active, right? And we are going to include more active events to lead into that cognitive challenging. So I couldn't get the video to load, but the top right-hand picture, we're playing bat the ball with a, it's basically a fly spotter, right? But it's not, it's a little item. And so as they're going back and forth, one of the things that happened is the ball or the balloon went out of play. And she's holding the racket in her right hand. Realizing the ball came to this side, she hit it with her left hand. And while most of us do not even think anything about that, gets a million likes on Facebook, then we would care. But for long-term care, what's important is that beautiful brain recognized the point of the game was to keep the ball in play, not hit it with the racket. And so our resident was able to say, okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to change my routine and I'm going to hit it. That ball didn't drop. She didn't get frustrated. And it's because we are keeping these, neuroplasticity. We play a game real quick. I love this game. You gotta do it, but put your hands below. It's called Shoot the Bunny. So you're gonna shoot. Come on. Right. Yeah, okay. These are little things that test your neuroplasticity, right? That's what we're gonna be leaning into. And is anyone really like coming out of memory care, getting a job? No. But what happens if these types of things allow you to recognize your daughter from the father? What's that worth? To me, that's worth a lot. They're not expensive games. This is what we're leaning into to preserve psychosocial well-being for the people that we promise to care for. Any questions? That was Mardi Gras. We don't celebrate it like they do down in Northern, so we do celebrate it. Done? And I'm gonna really quickly, and I will do 30 seconds or less because the next thing that we're doing is decidedly more boring. But you have the facility assessment in front of you, right? That lovely 30-page document that says everything we do in the nursing home. It's part of the board packet.
And the real things I want you to look at on that, for that matter to me. And should be spoken about are really the service lines, the programs, the things that we're running into. This is a document that I will ask Bill, I'm just gonna ask you guys to look at it over the next month. I'm gonna ask Bill to bring a copy with him to the next board meeting, because it does have to have a hard signature at some point. That's for those binders. You guys know that the binders are the all important holy grail for CMS and survey. And so, those are the things I want to talk about really quickly. And everything in this document changed from the last time we spoke about it a year ago today, because we are a very different organization. Now that we're part of a whole instead of a department of a separate, you know? So our facilities are different, the amount of patients we can handle are different. Our couple of things that stayed the same is we are duly certified. So people will ask you sometimes, can you do rehab in every bed, or do you have a distinct part? And we do not. So memory care patients can get skilled therapy. That is not the same everywhere, but it is something that we do. And so I think it's important to know that. Specifically, the second couple of pages talk about the people we care for. What things can we do, can we not do? There will still be service lines we do not lean into at all. Or really for the most part, I would never say never anymore, but even though we're part of a hospital system, we don't typically do things like wound vacs. It's really difficult to make that make sense in terms of fiscal responsibility and patient care, especially when you don't do them very often. So we try not to do those things. So that's what I really want you to look at. Towards the end is your staffing. Our staffing plans are on there. I do know the question came up not that long ago in public forum. Are we understaffed in the nursing home? Specifically, I believe the question brought to Bill was, are you really running just one nurse and two CNAs for the building? No, the answer to that is no. And that's noted in the staffing plans portion of your facility assessment. You don't have to be masters of the whole document, but if there's something you're concerned about, shoot me an email. Otherwise, you can ask Bill. He has the document as well. And if you agree with it, then next month I'd like you to sign it so I can put it in my binder for survey readiness. Any questions? And then I'll step down. Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Dawn. Thank you, Dawn. All right, moving on, the next update is from Dawn. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you very much. It's really good to be here with everybody in person this time around. I'm sorry I've got my back to you very slightly. I just want to go through a few things before I jump into some revenue cycle updates on the legacy AR. The first thing is just our CEO meeting. That's the one that we had to set up again because we postponed it, which is now going to be on the 9th and the 10th of March. Really looking forward to that. Unfortunately, Bill is not invited to that because he's a short timer. But really, if you're looking forward to having a good meeting with all of our CEOs, and that's normally a very, very good time, well spent. Lots of good sharing of ideas, a lot of updates on what we have going on with regards to things like AI policies. I know that you had a presentation in the last meeting from Derek on cybersecurity. So there are specific things that are going on that are obviously very, very top of mind in the hospital industry, and absolutely more specifically to critical access. One of the things that is at the moment just a very, very cloudy picture is the Rural Transformation Fund. There is so much going on and I'm talking now specifically with regards to the state of Wyoming. And I'm sure a lot of you or some of you have details on what might be going on, but they put together, or they are putting together a 9-person consulting committee. They are at the moment deciding on where the allocation of $200 million will be allocated to. But there is a really, really big concern that there's no sort of real clarity on what this team is doing. And you might know more than I do, because I don't know a lot. These are just the things that I know about. The big concern is, you know, these checks actually should have been written out to hospitals. By August this year, the hospitals are supposed to be in a situation where they're actually starting to report back on their spend. And the way things look right now, and this is across the board, not just in the state of Wyoming, but in all states, it looks like that no money is going to be received by any of the hospitals probably until at least April or May. So, you know, how hospitals are going to spend money between May and August and report something back by August is just impossible to understand how that logic is going to work. And I don't know if you've had more updates. Maybe you'll cover that in your section, but it's a very, very cloudy picture at the moment. That's all I can say. Our annual conference this year is going to be the 4th to the 8th of October. I have mentioned that before. I said that they were working on a new venue. I will be finalizing the venue on Friday, so next week expect to see finally an email saying the dates on that. I do know one thing for sure, it's definitely going to be in Florida. I can't tell you where in Florida, but it will definitely be in Florida. And I'm hoping that we can get lots more of this old revenue cycle money in, and the current money that's going on in the hospitals, so that we can see more of you board members at our annual conference. I really would like to see more of you attend if possible, and if budget allows. I've just recently hired a new business director for the company. Myself and Derek have hired a new business director, just as a throw-in snippet, something for you to know. That person is their remit is more than likely going to be largely focused on technology, the technology products that we sell. When it comes to new hospital management contracts, between myself and Derek and Mark and a few of the other, the senior consultants, we tend to handle that side of the new business. So this new business director will be focusing largely on revenue cycle, zero balance products, insurance discovery, things like that. I mentioned AI a little bit earlier. We've been working on putting together a sort of suggested AI policy for our hospitals. Because some hospitals are doing a really good job, they're really moving it forward. They have the resources within their IT departments, et cetera, that they can really, and they have even in some of our hospitals, they even have put together AI committees, and they've been working on this for a very long time, so they've made some really good progress. And then other hospitals don't have that. They don't have those resources, et cetera. So we've decided to put together a fairly simple AI policy template, but one that will be really useful for everybody. And once we have that template finalized, we're going to send it out, and you can use it, throw it away, chuck it, use it, whatever you decide. I hope to have that draft out by the end of, in 2 weeks' time. Because when we have our CEO meeting in Phoenix on the 9th and 10th of March, I first want to go through it with a number of our CEOs and CFOs before we actually send it out to everybody. One thing I wanted to mention, which I've thrown this in because I've heard, I think you might find this interesting. One of our hospitals, this is now the 3rd year that this one hospital has done a Valentine's Day fundraiser. And what they've done is, and they make it a really big deal. They make it a dinner. It gets everybody in the community, their partners, wives, husbands, to come out to this. And they start marketing it early, they start marketing it sort of October, November last year before the Valentine's event. And they do a silent auction. They do a silent auction of somewhere in the region of 12 different things, holidays, luxury women's handbags, all sorts of different kinds of things. And then they have one particular prize which they just sell their tickets on. And then they also have the silent auction. So they fund the raffle ticket for the Valentine's Day. They obviously sell seats and table seats for the evening itself. This is now their third year. This year they raised $250,000. $250,000. So I said to Mike, the CEO, a few weeks because he was trying to obviously sell everybody, right? And he was doing, they all do a very good job of marketing. They only had one marketing manager in the hospital, one marketing manager. And he was, they had, for instance, this bourbon, they had a bourbon set, they had a 5-day golf tournament, destination golf tournament and things. So I said to him, okay, I'm going to bid on a few of these, and I worked out my bids and he said to me, okay, well, I'll let you know, if you're in the running on the evening, because it happens that evening, that finishes the auction that evening. And I had in my head for the one trip, had about $1,500 in my head for the golf trip. And it went for like $4,000, And the bourbon, I looked at the bourbon and I did some analysis on the bourbon bottles, and I don't really know bourbon very well, but I just researched it. And I came up with the number of, sort of $2,500 for the bourbon. That would have been my bid ceiling. It went for like $6,000. And all these different, different things. And they raised $250,000. Then they went to the community and they've gone to the community and they've done this for years as well. And they found certain donations in the community where they didn't do a full match, but they might do 25 cents on every dollar or 50 cents on every dollar. So they ended up making $350 out of their Valentine's Day. Just unbelievable, but it's just, the reason I want to share it is every single year it's got stronger and stronger and stronger. It all gets down to marketing, it's all planning, and it all really just gets down to hard work, That's what it is. And it's amazing what can be done. That's really why I wanted to share that story. Food for thought. I wanted to just talk down about the revenue cycle because there's some good news and there's some bad news, and I know that there's even some news here that Bill and Steve are not even aware of. Just came about today. So I just want to take you through some numbers and I'm very, very happy to send these reports out tonight when I get back to the hotel to all of the board members, if you'd like me to. I kind of like to simplify them because it's just data. So we started working end of December. We started, I think, with one collector, and we added another collector. We're now up to 3 collectors. So progress, I just want to give you some progress from end of December. I gave a report in the January board meeting, or was it thereabout? I think thereabouts, I'm not sure exactly. So 28th, going back to the end of December, claims errors, I'm rounding these numbers off, we have 400K. In 28th of January, we're down to 275K. And as of the end of this month, we are now down to 166K. Claims error reductions overall, we've done 50%, which is really good. End of December, opening now, we are on 929K. End of January, we're down to 390K, and we're now down to 293K. So only a difference of 100K between end of Jan and end of Feb. One thing you've got to keep in mind, which I know is pretty obvious, but easy to lose sight of, when you start collecting AR and you start working on revenue cycle, you obviously chase the last large dollars first, right? So you chase the large numbers. So it makes sense that you recover the big numbers and you have great success in the beginning, and then it filters down after that because you're chasing the smaller numbers at the end. So that's what I just wanted to highlight that. Outstanding insurance debts, we had 1.2 million end of December. 2 million end of December, 1.2 million end of Jan, and 1.1 million end of Feb. Didn't have a lot of movement there, but as yet, but the balances have been reduced by 29% overall. We spoke about ambulance a little bit earlier. We have had close to $600,000 gone back into old aging AR as of this week. And that is because the staff have not registered or posted charges for ambulance claims. They've been registering, they've now been registering the ambulance patients and posting charges that were never done at the time of service. I have a total number added to that column of 557K as of today. So we're talking about ambulance, and we've been talking about ambulance money for quite some time. A whole lot of things going on with ambulance, but that is the reason why those invoices have not been done. So we added 600K to the plate, but I think the most important thing is, we've been able to, they've now had been invoiced or are being invoiced, and we can collect that money. And it's not gone, because thankfully it's been found. A couple of other things that are really, really important. Spoke about the inpatient claims. So they're working with Urchin between Mariah, Deraine, our team, Margaret, Elreen, to reprice all inpatient claims so that they can be submitted. Inpatient private room rates were never established in Urchin. They are working with Urchin Epic to systematically get all IP claims repriced so they can be submitted ASAP. Sarah is one of the girls in the team, is working with Mariah to see if they can manually update and release claims while the systemic update is underway. So that's a new thing. One thing, I don't know if you've seen this yet, Steve, but this was a one that we weren't happy to see, but it's now being fixed. Whoever did the Medicare enrollments, they only enrolled for Medicare Part A for the hospital. Medicare B was not enrolled, failed to enroll Medicare Part B. So I know there's correspondence going on with Steve. Steve is aware of this one in particular. But because of this, all Medicare Part B hospital claims need to be held until 855 enrollment is done. So these are things, unfortunately, these are the things that happen when you start wrapping your arms tighter around revenue cycle. Revenue cycle is complicated. And when your house is not being in the order that it should have been, unfortunately, these things come about. And I said this to you earlier on, Sonia. It's no point in blaming anybody. It's a case of finding it and fixing it and moving on. Don't want to start pointing fingers at people. It's just a case of the most important thing is to find the money and get it in the door. That's it.
If I could just tag on
Yeah.
So you may already know this, but I'll say it anyway. Part A is inpatient, Part B is outpatient. So Part B is a bigger part of our business. And the application to get the Part B tied to our NPI was completed today. That doesn't mean it's effective today, right? The application was completed. So we're moving along. It's not a lengthy 3-month process.
Okay. So, if you look at us, they are related, aren't related, but, somewhere in the region of another 600K that we got in the door in revenue cycle. But we've also added another 600K to that old legacy AR for the ambulance invoices to now recover. The fact of the matter is, the money is there to be recovered, so that's a good thing.
And we have a time back on it.
Yeah.
I know there's a time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's within that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it is. And that's all I have for this evening. Any questions for me?
On the ambulance stuff, then does that bring, like what you presented earlier on the percent that's not billable, does that bring that down or is that not associated? That's still separate.
Yes, it's part of that, but it doesn't change the numbers that I presented.
Do you have concerns that we will start timing out on any of these things before we can address?
I think if we do a really efficient job, which I think I feel confident in all, I think. When I look at the charges in total, they are somewhere in the region of 90 charges. So I don't see that being that difficult.
Dom, in your assessment, do you think we have identified and plugged all the holes in our boat, so to speak, at this point, or are there things out there that?
No, I wouldn't like to, I can't comment on that confidently right now. I think that with Mariah now on deck, and I think, Margaret, like, deeply entrenched, Elreen as well. And I think once we start getting this EDW feed, through to us on a daily basis, which should have been the end of Feb. And once again, there was some kind of problem with Ocean, we now will have that feed in our hands at the end of March. But our team is now getting a daily report. So we're getting a daily report that's coming in, which we've generated through the EDW anyway. And we're picking things up. I think that I would say by the end of next month, I think that I'll be able to answer that question a lot comfortably and confidently than right now. But I just, I can't wait until we get this Ocean EDW and through into our enterprise data warehouse so that you can see that every single day. So if it automatically goes to the CEO and CFO and they can look at yesterday, the last 24 hours, and they have every stat that they want. So all the stats that Steve was going through tonight, you will have that automatically in your inbox every single day on a previous day. And that's exciting because it makes your life a lot easier. And, it's just, it's real time. It's real time, what's going on.
So if I can add on to question two, Mariah and I actually had a discussion about that last night. Some things you don't know, and you find out when you get it. And the key is addressing those denials, because if there's one denial, there might be 10 accounts that applies to, and you can go back and fix the root cause. We don't want to just respond to and fix that one account. We want to know what the root cause is creating that denial. And so some of those things are going to pop up as we release these claims that have been on 100% claim. So we hope it's not very many, but time will tell over the next couple of weeks.
And Steve's so right about that. You see ill-disciplined revenue cycle departments sometimes, and it's just whackable. Every single denial, they're trying to just fix that denial. And what Steve said is so critical is you got to go to the root cause, and rather just fix the root cause for L10 or 20 or 30 in that sequence. And then move on to the next denial, and not just continually just try to sort out ones and twos. That's just a nightmare. Yeah.
So back to the AI discussion, is that something that AI can help with to identify, we get a denial on this one thing, run an analysis on everything else to determine where else that might be?
Yeah, so very much so. And when we have the EDW connected, and that flow is going, because at the moment there's somewhere in the region of 18,000 files coming into that enterprise data warehouse. Then if you have a question, if you have a query, we can answer that query in minutes. If you want to say, okay, well, I want to know how this position, I want to compare this position in March 2025 to March 2026, we can generate that report literally in minutes. And then obviously there are other efficiencies coming with regards to AI in terms of answering and writing denial letters. And, we already have that in place right now. We haven't implemented it with Sublette, But some of those things, where the letters are automated. I don't know if you went through that presentation. I should probably put another presentation on Derek's plate and ask him to present that to you guys. Because I think you'll find that very interesting. And you actually, because we have within our enterprise data warehouse, we've developed something along the lines of the equivalent of, of Grok, where we can just, we call it Bob, but it can automatically generate letters to fights and miles and things like that.
You said health tech already has this system, but we are not necessarily using.
We're not using it yet, because we don't have the enterprise data warehouse linked, it's not running. And we also need to have that discussion, we would need to sit down with the revenue side of the department, the CFO, the CEO, and say, okay, well, which areas can we look at automating, because it's not always just a solution. Sometimes if it's not a fit-all hospital solution. So that's why we're only using it in some of our hospitals right now. It really depends on the infrastructure of the department, the FTEs, the headcounts, their job responsibilities, and things like that. But it's just to take away some of the tedious work.
Questions for all? Thank you, Dom.
My pleasure. Very nice to be here with you in person.
Happy to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Dale, you are up with our CEO report.
So starting with the people section of my report, by the end of this evening, we will have made an offer to a new HR director candidate. So I've written the offer. I always like to sit on a little while and go back and reread it just to make sure I didn't miss anything. So after the board meeting, I'll be doing that and sending that off. Assuming that we're able to work out the details, then the candidate should be able to start within about 3 weeks. So fingers are crossed. I've been asked questions about Mariah, our new revenue cycle director, about her schedule, and I'm happy to say that she is working full-time on site. She's in the process of moving from the hospital campus down to the Sublette Center. Her billing team has already moved, so they're already the entrance off of what would it be, the west side of the building, where Julie Bell, her office. So that's where the billing office is, so that it's easy access for the public to come in. So they're already down there, settling into their new space. Overall, I think Mariah is the last one to move out. So now that her office up on the campus is empty, Don will be moving into that space. And then once Don moves, Carrie will move into what I call the fishbowl office that Don is in right now. And then that will complete this round. And then we're going to start working on the rooms within the clinic, deciding, is this an office or is this an exam room? And beginning to work to get those spaces ready so that as we hire new providers, we'll have them ready to go. Based on the conversation we had at the special board meeting last week, we have now held a total of 7 employee education sessions. We did one of them, the noon one today, was via Teams so that people could dial in, and we also recorded it so that people who weren't able to attend any will be able to go back and watch. I think we had well over 100 people attend one of the 7 meetings. And while no one is happy about this change, I think by having the face-to-face conversations, there was a degree of understanding. So what I say is, I'm not asking you to agree with me, but I want you to be able to understand what I'm telling you. And they also seem to appreciate that the priority is threefold. 1, to standardize our benefits within the healthcare environment. 2, to try and save money, in this case, $250,000 without affecting anybody's pay. And 3, to try and reduce the number of people that we potentially will have to let go. So I'm assuming the 250,000 is 4 to 5 jobs. And so while people don't necessarily like it, I think there is a degree of understanding. And I want to thank Jan in particular for attending all of the meetings with me and being such a great support. She showed the documents. We actually walked through page by page every document, and I highlighted things. If I forgot something, Jan would point it out to me. And then as we got a series of questions, she would keep track so that a question that wasn't asked at this session but had been asked before, we would circle back and answer. So I think that we have adequately fulfilled the desire of the board to give the employees education and an opportunity to provide input. And we did have some questions that we're following up on. So one related to the EMS service. They use PTO in big blocks, 48 hours at a time because of their schedule. And so we are actually looking at a potential revision to the policy specific to that. And so we'll mention that, we'll highlight that if in fact we determine that have that change. But Vicky and BJ and I had a meeting this morning in response to a question that was asked at one of the sessions. Also, some of the topics that have been mentioned at the sessions are going to prioritize the next batch of policies that we need to work on. So the PTO donation policy, that's going to rise to the list. The without pay policy, that's going to rise on the list. So I feel very good about the sessions. So the ones that are PTO donations, CME support for non-provider staff, without pay, shift differentials. I sent a long list of policies to the HR department. I know that I made them worried about what is Bill thinking. It was like 40 or more policies, and I highlighted 7 that we need to look at. So that's what we're going to start working on next. About 2 weeks ago, we did the mailing to the MRI tech. I've reported that we're going to be losing our great MRI tech. We've received 2 responses so far. Neither of them have been well qualified as MRI candidates. We're hoping to get more response in the next week or 2. But just in case, Kayla and I are looking at other coverage options for our MRI service. So while we don't want to talk to travelers, that's one of the things we're going to look at. We are looking at PRN employees. I believe we've already hired 1 PRN MRI tech. So we're looking at ways that we can cover the service until we get Bobby 2.0 hired. Shifting to medical staff, wanted to let you know that the second candidate that we have made an offer to for our revised urgent care same-day clinic schedule turned us down. It turned out that this candidate had already accepted an offer at another place, but really wanted to live in Pinedale. So that's why he was talking to us. And then as he was evaluating the offer, he decided it just wouldn't be right to say no to the place that he'd already accepted an offer from. So we continue our recruiting efforts. I sent you a note as soon as I had heard that Raleigh Perry, our wonderful women's health practitioner, has submitted her resignation. As Raleigh is explaining to folks, her husband's health just isn't doing well in this community, so they are planning to move back to Idaho. As soon as Raleigh notified me of this, one of the questions I asked her, you just got to ask, especially for someone as special as Raleigh, is there any chance we can talk you out of this? And she said no, that to meet the needs of her family, they really need to move. So we immediately began recruiting for a replacement. We think that's an essential service for us, this women's health specialty. And so we already have a couple of new grad doctor and nurse practitioner candidates that we will be interviewing. But I just want the board to know, the community to know that we recognize how important it is that we backfill. Not that we can ever replace Raleigh, but we're going to backfill someone into that specialty. We're working to update the provider incentive program for the emergency department. a number of the metrics within that program aren't really well-defined or aren't specific to ED as we would like them to be. So I've had conversations with the ED providers, and our goal will be to have that program redefined and ready to go either at the beginning of the fiscal year or the beginning of the calendar year. I haven't decided the time frame, but one of those two timeframes. So trying to work proactively with the ED providers to make that happen. Earlier this week, Kayla and I met with the Jackson Radiology Group. We've been in conversations with them and with St. John's Hospital about revising our contract for radiologist coverage. They've actually been servicing us for years. They also provide support for Kemper. And it was a very cordial meeting, but we still have some serious concerns about the current configuration of the support, including a number of aspects that are directly related to St. John's, not so much the radiologist. So it's two separate. St. John's has the PACS, the computer system that holds all the images, and they're proposing a significant increase. So we currently pay, I think it's $6 per exam. They're wanting it to go to $8. In my experience, $6 is a high number. And then there are a number of other issues. So it's not necessarily the radiology group themselves that our issues are with, but since it's a package deal for us, we have to look at both sides of the equation. And so as we work through this, trying to make sure that we have the best deal we can and ideally get some savings. So this is another area where we are looking for savings. We're also looking at alternatives. And so Kayla has found another radiology group that we are vetting, just in case. Don't want to wait until the deal with Jackson falls through before we have somebody else in the wings. And so Kayla has already done some client referral conversations, and we have heard nothing but good things about this other company. So I am setting sort of our internal goal of having this issue resolved by the end of March. So St. John's is going to have to kick it up a little bit because this has been dragging on for months and months and months. And so we really need to get it resolved. If we can get an appropriate financial package, then I think the preference would be to stay with the current company. But it has to be within reason, and we can't be paying these way out of line numbers just because they serviced us for years.
Mhm.
So I just wanted the board to be aware that we're working on that and that we are both trying to be respectful to the group that we've worked with for a long time, but also to protect the best interests of the organization, the community. Shifting to the finance side of things, a number of the required interviews for the annual audit were completed this week. So I'm not sure how familiar the board is with an audit process, but in addition to all the fun that Steve and Michelle have working with the auditors, they do questionnaires. So they talk with Jan and ask her a series of questions. They talk with me, and a lot of it is about trying to assess risk. So they ask you, are you aware of something in this area? Are you aware of something in that area? So those interviews have been completed. And at the end of mine, I asked, how long is it going to take before we get the audit? I was told that they're very close. So I think it's reasonable to assume that we should have an audit to present to you by the next regular board meeting, not necessarily the next board meeting. Because remember, we're going to want to do an extra one, a special one, middle of March to look at the personnel policies, the benefit policies. But I think that by the end of March, we may well have an audit to present to you. So that's good news. The critical access survey response. So I sent a note to the board when we got that document back. Wanted to remind the board we had a total of 12 deficiencies. There are 3 different levels. Immediate jeopardy, which is where they can shut you down right away unless you fix it right away. What is the next one? I forget what the next one is.
Additional?
Conditional, yeah. And then what I'll call regular. All of ours were in the regular category. So no conditional, no immediate jeopardy. So that was good. Vicki and I spent time this afternoon going through all of the responses, the corrective action plans for those. I believe all of those are done. The last thing we have to do, you would think that you would be able to upload documents, typed documents into the system. Nope, don't do that. You have to retype everything. So we're going to do that tomorrow morning. And then Christy, who luck of the draw was on vacation over the last week, she will be back. And so we're going to use her as an extra set of eyes to review all of the work that's been done to make sure that our submission is really clean. Because we don't want to have them say, wait a minute, this is wrong, or you missed that, because then that just adds more time to the whole process. You know, another 10 days for them, another 10 days. So I would rather submit it tomorrow and have it really be clean than to submit it tonight and have an oops. So we expect to have it submitted tomorrow. Once they accept our corrective action plan, that then becomes the date at which our critical access designation would be effective. We don't get to start billing yet. That won't happen until CMS and Meridian then reviews everything, does whatever takes them so much time. But we will have done everything we can to complete the conversion to critical access. So again, we will post you as soon as we know whether the response has been received.
So we will be able to bill as a critical access hospital. Once we get that stuff retroactive to the date that those got here.
Sort of like we did with Medicare and Medicaid.
Yeah.
Where we had to go back a period. And if I remember right, we plan to continue to bill as a PPS even during that intervening period,
Yes.
so that we can continue to have cash flow. And then once we get the final approval from CMS and Meridian, we will go back and reprocess all of those Medicare claims.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of a timing issue because you have to make sure the recoupment is completed before you rebill, otherwise you have a double billing
Yeah.
issue. So
Sure.
there's just some technical things that we have to address.
So,
Yeah.
well, good, well, we're close. And then miscellaneous. So just today, we received notification regarding our underground fuel tank. So related to our emergency generator, we actually have a tank in the ground for diesel fuel. Well, the notification we received is that there is an opportunity to be part of a state-funded insurance product. I think that's a fair way to describe it. We didn't know about it. We're not part of it today. And then we're also looking at getting a quote from Tegler for a separate standalone insurance. It's actually like a pollution policy in case you were to have a fuel leak. So we're going to look at that just as a way to compare, do we need additional coverage? Excuse me. In addition to the program that we might be able to take advantage of through the state. Our overhead paging system, I had reported to you earlier that when we were doing some testing of our code stations throughout the hospital, that there were areas in the new building that you can't hear overhead paging. So we, Tyler and Brett met with marshals. So we're not going to use the company out of Colorado anymore. They're just, it's too difficult to get them to respond. And when they do respond, it's too expensive because of the distance. So Marshall's is out of Salt Lake. So Tyler and Brett have already met with them, provided them with models, photographs of what we currently have, and then trying to get additional equipment in the dead areas. And so we're now awaiting a response from Marshall for what that's going to look like, how much money it's going to involve. I already talked about the office moves. The last thing I have under miscellaneous is that we have revised the boilerplate contract related to the 307 Air Rescue. That's the program about having helicopters stationed on our pad. So we sent down all of our input, and I think not yesterday, day before, I got a document back. I haven't had time to go through it yet. But we also have reached out to Tegler's to see about insurance coverage. And I'll do a more complete report when we bring this to you at a future board meeting. But there is, as you might expect, additional risk to us by having a helicopter on the pad most of the time. The preferred way to handle that is that they have to provide insurance to us and then indemnify us. So that's the preferred option. We can look at buying our own policy. We'll have numbers to see what that looks like, but clearly I'm going to pursue having them do it and then indemnify us in the contract. So we're just continuing our due diligence, and we'll bring all of that to you when it's all done at a future board meeting. I don't know whether we'll have it ready by the middle of the March meeting. We certainly will have it ready by the end of March meeting. And then I have a number of topics to talk with you in executive session about. Happy to answer questions on any of it. I know, short report tonight, sorry.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone have questions for those? Thank you very much. All right, that puts us at the end of our reports. We will move on to old business. Only one topic under that portion of the agenda this evening, and that is the approval of payroll and bills.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, everyone should have that on their materials.
Motion, okay, approve payroll bills for the month of January 26. Now says $3,835,120.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any questions, concerns from board members? All in favor of the motion to approve payroll and bills in the specified amount, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. New business. Got just a couple of items. First item up for discussion this evening is, and I'll let Bill dive into this a little more as he was present, but we have been somewhat repeatedly called upon by the Board of County Commissioners, part of the commissioners, to release information regarding all of our salaries across the board. And while we are a public company, we don't necessarily do so without a FOIA request or a specific request. Although there is some feeling, I think, that we should comply voluntarily to some extent. So I think the question is, to what extent, if any, do we comply? What does that look like? What impact would it have on our employees if we do so? Or do we just sit on it? So do you want to add anything to that?
So on two different occasions, when I've done my reports to the county commissioners, a couple of them have brought this topic up. So the county has an obligation by state law to publish employee-specific payroll data. The two county commissioners that most actively talk about it feel that we should have a similar responsibility because we receive tax dollars. But it's clear that hospital districts, by law, don't have the same obligation. So this is maybe a transparency issue, it may be a perception issue, but at a recent meeting, there was conversation about whether the county commission would make a request to us, and they chose not to. So they understood that individually, they could do a FOIA request and sort of force our hand. As of yet, none of them have done that, and as a group, they chose not to make that demand of us. So the question that I put before the board and that I asked Lena to review for us was, is there a middle ground that we could meet that would provide the desired transparency without doing employee-specific data? Because they want to know by name what an employee is making and They want to know W-2 information for the last fiscal year, the last calendar year, sorry. I have explained to that that is not common within the healthcare environment. I've also explained to them the challenges that it will create for us. One employee then comparing their pay to another employee. And I asked them, I said, so how are you going to interpret this information? Within what context are you going to say we're paying appropriately or we are not? And so I used doctors as an example. I said, so if I tell you that we're paying a doctor $175,000, is that a good number or not? And they said, well, we don't really have any idea. I said, well, what if I tell you we're paying $350,000? Is that a good number? No. And they said, well, we wouldn't know. And I said, that's exactly the problem. Because people are going to compare our wages against what they personally make. So if I'm making $25 an hour doing whatever my job is, and I see a nurse that I know that is making much more than I am, is that fair? That's what it comes down to. That was a question that Jan and I heard often at the employee meetings. And so I'll tell you honestly, fair is a four-letter word. And there is no such thing as fair because it is based on the context within which you currently are being paid. And you have no way to interpret whether someone else's pay is fair or not. I've talked with them about our efforts to make sure that our wages are equitable, that they're market-based. I've actually been inclined, once you approve it, to send them our new compensation philosophy policy so that they can see how we go about setting wages. So just from a relationship perspective, I don't think telling them to pound sand is the right approach. But I also don't think complying with the level of detail that they desire is the right approach, because I don't think we're obligated to do that. And I think that our employees would be dismayed, to say the least, if we did a mass publish of everybody's names and wages. So in my note to Lena, I included a number of different options. Do we blind information? Do we do just pay scale info? Do we do wages by department? I think schools sometimes do that. So I don't know exactly what the right answer is, but I think we need to give them more than we're not required to, so we're not. I think that will invite a FOIA request where then we will be required to do it all. And so if we can find a way to meet them in the middle, I would strongly encourage us to try and do that.
I agree with that approach. I think that the ask will continue until we comply, at least in some way, shape, or form. So.
Can I ask one question? They are asking for the information to, because it's related to tax dollars and they have to comply.
So it's related to tax dollars. They're wanting to know how we are using the no levy funds. And they're working under the assumption that a significant part of that goes to payroll.
Have we maybe asked for like the Wyoming State Hospitals Association's opinion on if this is standard practice? But I know it varies from state to state, right? So I'm just wondering if they have a point of view on this.
So I've not asked the association. As I say, I have asked Lena.
Yeah.
From a legal perspective for hers, I certainly would have happy to reach out to WHA. Right now, they are sort of focused on other topics, and I should give you a quick update on that before we finish.
Chair Hoffman, Lena would like to say something. I think she's popped on a couple of times.
Okay, Lena.
I
please.
apologize, Madam Chair. I didn't want to interrupt. This request, in my opinion, is not a reasonable request. And that's partially because statutorily, we are not required to post this information. We are subject to the Wyoming Public Records Act. And again, right, if they do a FOIA request, we then have to produce it. However, I've represented hospitals across the state of Wyoming for the past 22 years, and never have I ever once had a client have to provide this information or publicize this information. And that is because the board, does their due diligence in trusting their CEO, who is very experienced in determining, market value and wages and so forth, to the extent that other counties and their commissioners do not request this information from the local hospital districts. So I just want to make that really clear. I did double check with the hospital districts that I do have contact with. None of them have ever had to produce this information, nor have they ever been requested to. I did have a lengthy conversation with the county attorney today. There in Sublette County. He assured me that this was not an issue and not something that the county commissioners were requesting. But if there were individual requests by commissioners, they could do it on their own time and submit a FOIA request. So if this board is so inclined to do something like this, although you are not statutorily required to do so, I would recommend that you give a salary range or what have you for certain positions or specific positions. I would never advise this board to provide personal information. You owe your employees that right to privacy as long as we possibly can, subject to the Public Records Act.
Thank you, Lena. I do share your concern, though, Bill. I think if we don't comply, at least to some extent, like I mentioned earlier, there will be a private request or two. And then our hand will be forced.
So a suggestion, will you allow me to work with Lena and develop a specific bunch of information that we might be willing to share with them? Including things like policies, so that they can understand the process that we use to set. And then we can bring that back so that between now and then I can say to the county commissioners, we had an active conversation about this at the board meeting, that our legal counsel and I are working to develop a package that we're going to propose to the board, and we'll have that ready at the March board meeting.
I'm comfortable with that, and anybody else is.
Yeah, I think in this, we're gonna have to be a teacher in this case. It's a misunderstanding of the law. And why does the county have to post it, but we don't have to post it? And it's very clearly in the statutes for special districts that we don't have to, but they do. I don't know. I don't know if, I guess what I would say what I'm comfortable with is definitely a statement on what are our policies and what are our philosophies on compensation, and make it very clear so that they can understand that. And then I don't want to get to the point where we're publishing names and salaries, but if we could be like nurse 1, nurse 2, nurse 3, and maybe they're not identifiable to individuals, right? And if that would suffice, but they would want. I could maybe go there, but I don't want to get to the point where they FOIA us and then we have to publish names and salaries. And that's not going to be fun, right? But
So if you would let Lena and I work, develop a package, and maybe we can give them enough that they can be satisfied, but not so much that they're going to then FOIA us. And so then, and part of this just trying to buy us time, because I have explained to them that we're not required to do this, and they don't care.
they don't care.
They still think we have a responsibility to be transparent. And in their mind, transparency is doing what they're required to
It
do.
does, and there's an element of. It doesn't exist, but there's an element of oversight. We give you money, now we have oversight. Yes, and it doesn't exist. There's no link
So they haven't said that.
Yeah.
Whether they're thinking that or not,
I think
they haven't said that.
so.
Are they asking for just themselves? They just want to review it or they want to then publish it for the humans at large?
They want it in the newspaper.
And then the one had couched it with, well, the citizen approached me and wants this. It's okay, but what citizen is that? Why didn't they?
Why didn't they ask?
Some request, right? They're,
Not all want this information.
Right.
I think we have to specify and be really careful.
Yeah.
They attempted to get a motion, I think, out of it and make it a formalized action to require us, and that was not well received. So,
3 specifically said that they were not in support of the commission
Yes.
requesting that of us.
We did this once before long ago, and it caused
Yeah.
huge issues within every department, between every employee when they, because they did names and salaries, and it was a big, big deal.
that's ticking long.
It was.
a huge impact.
Yeah.
A huge negative impact across the board.
And it lasts a long time.
Yeah, it does.
People make character judgments about the people they work with and it was terrible. It was,
I don't know.
I'm too hard of that.
So if you're comfortable, then that's what I'll commit to do. I'll work with Leanne. I'll give you some options to consider. And then I'll present that to them. The offer, not the data.
Yeah.
But the offer and see whether or not that's acceptable.
With a repeated statement of this is not required of us
Yes,
statutorily.
yes.
However, I'm comfortable with that. Is everybody else on the board comfortable with that plan?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I don't know. I still, yes, ultimately, but I still do have some discomfort that that's, even being asked of us, and as Jameson mentioned, the level of authority that they think that they have, and while I want to be transparent, I mean, at some point, when do we have to say, this is not your business, or if you want that information yourself, request it, but then I do understand the risk of them individually requesting it and publishing it.
Right, because once we release it to them, we lose control of it.
Unfortunate, but it is what it is.
And then if I may, just a couple of comments about the rural health transformation. So one of the big questions that's in play is the question of the perpetuity fund. So I think you know that the plan in Wyoming was to take a huge percentage of this money, put it into savings, and then in perpetuity pay out 4%.
80%.
Yeah, 80%. And personally, so I was on a call last Friday afternoon, and I said, and this was a soapbox speech, so forgive me, but I said, at what point are we going to say enough is enough? I said, this is an opportunity to truly affect change in once in a lifetime fashion. And I said, putting it away for the future and only pulling out 4% is not going to fix it. I said, is it going to take a hospital or two closing before it is realized how important this issue is? I mean, how many hospitals are already on the edge, ourselves included? And so I said, we have always been very delicate about opposing candidates because we don't want to get on their bad side. I said, I would submit we're already on their bad side because they have a way without using any of the state's money to fix many of the problems, and they're not doing it. And one of the big concerns is that they don't have a good plan B. So if CMS turns down the current proposal, they don't have a good plan B, and the session is going to run out without any action on this. And then the only option is going to be to call a special session. All the time, the clock is ticking on the hospitals that are right on the edge. So I find this very frustrating, the approach, and for a state as traditionally conservative as Wyoming is, I think it's a real missed opportunity. It really is. And at some point, there has to be a political consequence to this inaction.
Is the Wyoming Hospital Association as a lobbying agent for hospitals across the state taking any action, are you hearing, or are they preparing?
They are actively involved, both with the governor and with the legislature. But it seems as if no one is stepping up and taking the lead. I mean, and the governor is in a real position because it's a legislative issue. And it was their plan that was submitted, that now is sort of being in many respects discarded. So the idea that to take 80% of the money, even if they had said 50% of the money, I might have accepted that. But 80% of the money is just ludicrous. I don't know who in their right mind would have accepted that as a good idea.
And the crazy thing is, that is not the intention of the funds.
Right.
You know, so if you go back to the roots, the reason, the objective of this fund, that doesn't even come into play.
And the other variable is of the remaining 20%, they're currently only talking about giving 15% of it to hospitals.
15% of the 20%?
Yes. Yes.
And where would they put the remainder?
Right. So EMS is one focus. Behavioral health is one. And is it access or is it education? It's one of those two.
But in a lot of communities, it's hospitals running EMS.
Hospital is healthcare in many of the small communities.
One of the items is technology.
Technology, yes. So I'm expecting potentially a special meeting to be called for tomorrow. I don't have a holdout hope for a good solution. I think it's going to get kicked, to a special session. But Dom is right. I think 20 states have already received their money.
I've been waiting for enabling legislation to appear or somebody to introduce a bill, and there's nothing.
Nothing.
Of course, their world and check.
So it was 122. That was the original one.
The only thing I have heard that I read, and I'm not gonna say it right, but they were the state Medicaid EMS reimbursement moved from 80 to 100%. I think I caught that in one bill. That's it. That's all I caught in the whole session. That's like, okay, now what do we do? Now what do we do, right? Yeah. Do we have to write a bill ourselves and then get somebody to sponsor it? Is that what
If that's the course, then I'm sure that's where Wyoming Hospital Association would go. So I just wanted to add a little bit more joyful thoughts.
Yeah, it's chaos, absolute chaos.
It is. And there's no need for it. This should be a topic of such unity.
Yeah.
I mean, you really should.
Just all you have to do is report back how you spend the money in those categories.
Yep.
I mean, I'm simplifying, but which is the intention for the money.
Yep.
And strict policies and deadlines have been put in place for reporting, so it shouldn't be so difficult.
So much good could be done.
Yeah.
To give you an idea on the concept, like, so in Utah, there was $2.5 million in work, right? The state of Utah decided to disperse that to the EMS. So they told the EMS, you have to use it for this or this. And their Department of Health just distributed it to them. They just have to, those individual agencies just had to submit back what exact programs they were using. That's what they submitted and very up. So just to give you an idea of what he's talking about.
Yeah, it's very, very low hurdles right there.
Yes.
Some hurdles, but they're very low and it's already in front.
And it's all clearly spelled out on their website. Every single thing is clearly spelled out.
Yeah.
Not much we can do at the moment, but you want. Next item, new business is FOIA request. On your agenda, it says there have been none. There actually was one very recently that was made, but it was specific to a business. And I'll let Bill or Lena, as they are addressing it, speak to it. So
So it was a company that was looking for information related to any contracts that we have or leases related to things like cell towers. So it really had nothing to do with healthcare business. So Lena and Michelle are working to put the information together. We don't think we have anything to produce, but we're just checking to make sure. And then we'll respond to it.
Are there a company that does these those kind of? No.
Lena, was it Steve Steele? Was that the name of the
Yeah,
company?
the company is Steep Steel Government. They are a government wireless telecommunications specialists. So I think that they just, broadly send out these FOIA requests for information.
Only other item of new business is the one that I added at the beginning, which is the review for transfer of interest accrual funds. And this is something that I was just advised very recently. I was kind of waiting until we finished up and closed the budget for construction, but I've been advised to go ahead and sweep this money now from project funds into the capitalized interest account, where it will help us pay our next interest payment. So it's looking as though we will have enough capitalized interest to make our full bond payment with the end of this fiscal year, or very close. So you've got the appendix D that was provided with a number, and that is really all I need to know is the board is okay with approving that sweep of funds from one account to what we can use it.
To approve appendix D as presented, which is would be trustee draw number 20.
Thank you, Jameson. We have a motion. Second. Thank you. Are there any questions or concerns? Anything clear? There should be one more of these. I'm close.
When was the last time we did this?
That's a good question. I want to say it was roughly a year ago. We swept some, but I can't remember exactly. All right, on the motion to approve appendix D, trustee draw number 29. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our business for the evening. At least for this session, we'll have some credentialing to return to after executive, but at this point, I would ask for a motion to enter into executive session for personnel, real estate contracts, and legal purposes.
Chair, for clarification, are we going for all of those reasons or just?
Bill can probably clarify.
Personnel, contracts, and legal. I don't have anything real estate.
Yeah, I would make a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of personnel, contracts, and legal.
Okay. And a second, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Madam Chair, I would just ask that Dawn stick around for legal if she could.
Yeah, can I go first? Is that okay?
I don't make the rules.
Yeah.
Please. Everybody who's traveling, travel safe.
Thank you, guys.
Sorry, Dawn, I just didn't want you to escape.
No,